Hey there, Titans Talk on your television. Steve Layman here with you. Glad you are here with us on this Monday on News Channel 5 Plus. Titans a loser yesterday, 14-7 to the Buffalo Bills at Nissan Stadium. That whole Bills Mafia contingent came in. They were loud. They were rowdy all weekend long. They packed Nissan Stadium out. I would guess 40% of the crowd probably wearing Bills colors yesterday. I know that frustrated a lot of the Titans fans who were in attendance. Many others obviously choosing not to go and perhaps giving up their tickets ahead of the game. That's always a problem that we talk about when one of these proud fan bases invades Nashville. But what was different yesterday is they left happy. So often we've seen these other team fan bases come in and they drink all their beer all weekend long, and they stay in the hotel rooms and all those sort of things. But the Titans send them home unhappy from Nissan Stadium. They protect home turf. That did not happen yesterday for a variety of reasons. It was a 14-7 loss. Clearly, the offense didn't get going again. 7 points scored for the second time in 3 weeks. That's not going to get it done in the National Football League. They had their opportunities. They had 2 different touchdowns called back on one drive. They had some other big plays that were nullified because of penalties. Some huge drops on third down that ended drives when they were moving the football and potentially could have gotten something going. And then, of course, the big story of the game, Cairo Santos missed 4 field goals. All 4 of his attempts were no good. That right there is 12 points if you make them. Even if you take away the 53-yarder at the end, which many people were questioning why he was even out there in the first place after going 0-3 to start the game, and considering the fact that the Titans were down 7 with about 7 minutes to play, even if he drills the 53-yarder, you still need a touchdown. So a lot of people questioning Mike Vrabel's decision-making there, and I think that's fair. But even if you take that completely away, if he makes the field goals within 50 yards, that's 9 points, and that's enough for the Titans to win yesterday. So for the second consecutive year, the Titans offense really lays an egg against the Bills. They failed to take control of the game when they had the opportunity. And Buffalo figures out how to win the game in the fourth quarter and really hand the Titans a frustrating loss. Now, for his part, today, Cairo Santos was shown the door. Perhaps maybe not a surprise to any of you out there. He was released by the Titans today, and they will be moving on, reportedly to Cody Parkey, another kicker who's had some of his own issues in the not-so-recent past. Parkey, by the way, tried out the same day that Santos did with the Titans when it became clear that Ryan Succop was not going to be able to kick for this team to start the season coming off of that knee injury. Santos won the tryout that day. So Parkey was the second choice that day. Now he's going to come in to replace Santos after the miserable day yesterday. For his career, Parkey's about an 84% make rate on his field goals over 5 seasons. It's solid in the National Football League, but of course everybody's going to remember the double doink on that field goal in the playoffs last year that cost the Bears a win against the Eagles and ended their season. That's why he was out of a job in Chicago. Now he has a chance to kind of make amends and rejuvenate his career here with the Titans over the next few weeks before the potential of Ryan Succop coming back by mid-year. So a huge scapegoat yesterday with Cairo Santos. David Quessenberry also released today. I don't think because they had any problems with his performance yesterday, but with the return of Taylor Lewan, the Pro Bowl left tackle, the Titans had 9 offensive linemen on their active roster. There's just no need to keep Quessenberry around at that point, so he is released today. Will be fondly remembered for his tackle-eligible touchdown against the Colts back in Week 2. He's really a great story, overcoming cancer, getting back into the National Football League, opportunity to make a team to start this year off. But he is no longer with the Titans as of today. A lot of questions, though, about this team and what happened yesterday. Some people will question the quarterback. I think he played fairly well yesterday, frankly, but he was sacked 5 times. So there's a lot to question about the offensive line, even with the return of Taylor Lewan. When you're down, when the offensive line is struggling, that means Derrick Henry doesn't get as many touches as you would hope, doesn't have the chance to be as effective as maybe you would like in the course of the game. And then when you look at the pass-catching options, Corey Davis, not a huge game. A.J. Brown doesn't have the touches that maybe you'd hope after such a great game in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. Adam Humphries, a few more opportunities yesterday on third down, but still not having the impact some people thought when he signed his free agent contract in the offseason. And then what about Delanie Walker? Catches a 30-yard ball in the opening play yesterday, which gets called back for holding on Taylor Lewan, and he's really not a part of the game plan after that. He's a Pro Bowl tight end. Coming off a big injury, I know, but they're just not making him a focal point of the offense right now, and they're struggling. Arthur Smith is struggling to figure out, with all the pieces of the offense, how to evenly distribute the ball to these guys, make them all happy, and most importantly, make this offense hum. Because as we mentioned, 7 points in the last 2 weeks does not seem, or 7 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks, does not seem to be commiserate with the amount of talent that there is there. I mean, Delanie Walker is a 3-time Pro Bowl tight end. Adam Humphries, you could make an argument last season, was the best slot receiver in the National Football League. Corey Davis is a number 5 overall pick. A.J. Brown is a 2nd-round pick. Jonnu Smith is a 3rd-round pick as your backup tight end. Even Tajay Sharp is a guy who can make some plays for you. Dion Lewis has done things in the backfield. Derrick Henry's a big-time running back. There are guys with talent at the disposal of Marcus Mariota and this offense. Yet, for whatever reason, they can't seem to click and put it all together and move the ball consistently and score points consistently. I think a lot of people are going to look at the offensive line. That's certainly where I'm looking right now as the biggest reason for this failure, because it's the penalties, it's the negative plays, it's the sacks. Those are the things that kill you on drives. And it certainly has affected this Titans offense so far this year. But there's got to be more to it than that. So many teams in the National Football League, even the bad teams, seem to have the ability to move the football and score points. Here are the Titans, a team that's won 9 games in 3 straight years, adding these pieces to its offense, and they're unable to move the ball consistently, unable to put up points. Where is the consistency? Where is the flow with that? And even as you look at the offensive line, Taylor Lewan comes back yesterday, doesn't seem to help. Roger Saffold, you signed and paid big money for him to solidify the left side of your offensive line next to Lewan yesterday. It didn't seem like they were meshing together. Both of them gave up sacks. The offensive line gave up 5 in all. It's now 22 through the first 5 games of the season. You're going to get your quarterback killed that way. So I think a lot of the focus has to be on the offensive line and what's wrong up front before you can look at anything else. But the entire offense is a problem, and you've got to feel bad for this defense right now. Dean Pease and his crew, they're one of the best units in football. They gave up 14 points yesterday and lost. In the 3 losses this season, the Titans defense has given up a total of 53 points. 53 points in their 3 losses this year. Think about that. Just for a second, that's just more than 17 points a game. If you give up 17 points a game throughout the course of the season, you are going to be one of the very best defenses in the National Football League when it comes to scoring defense. The Titans have lost those 3 games, giving up 17 points. When you give up 17, your offense has to eclipse that. And the Titans just simply aren't right now. The Titans defense as a whole is giving up 15 points a game on the season. And the team as a whole is 2-3. That tells you how inept the offense has been week in and week out this season. It's got to be better. And the bottom line for the Titans is this. 22 is the number under Mike Vrabel. If they score 22 points since the start of last season, with Mike Vrabel and maybe more importantly Dean Pease as the defensive coordinator, the Titans win. They do. The problem is they've only scored 22 or more points 8 times in the 21 games since the start of last season. That means 13 times it's been less than that. And of those games, they've scored less than 17, I think 10 times out of those 13. That is not going to cut it. Our phone lines are open tonight, 737-7767. You watched the game yesterday here on News Channel 5 or perhaps in the stadium. What were your thoughts on the atmosphere with all those Bills fans there? And what did you see from this Titans team? The good, the bad, the ugly. We always invited here on Titans Talk on News Channel 5. Plus 737-7767, the number. We have phone lines open for you. We will also get into our analysis from last night on the Electric Power Company's Sunday Sports Central. Hope you caught the show because it was a jammed-packed half hour. We'll get to some of it here, but Jonathan Hutton was in. He had great details, as always, from his duties within the team broadcast on Titans Radio. And Trent Dilfer, the former Super Bowl winning quarterback, now the head football coach at Lipscomb Academy, he stopped in to help us really dive into some of the offensive woes with Marcus Mariota. How much of it is his fault? How much of it is he being impacted by the woeful play of the offensive line? We'll also discuss a little bit about the AFC South as a whole in terms of the quarterback play, because everybody always wants to know, where do the Titans fit into the AFC South picture? And you've got 2 new quarterbacks in the division this year. What does it look like when you look at these rosters as a whole and then you look at the quarterbacks of those teams? Trent Dilfer, really good stuff on that as well. So we'll hear all of that stuff coming up on the program tonight, plus a lot of your phone calls. 737-7767, the number. And we will begin tonight with Chris. Chris, good evening. You are first up here on Titans Talk.
How you doing today?
Doing great.
Hey, listen. Thanks. Hey, listen. You know, I don't know where to start. There's so many holes, but here's what I got. Right now, I don't think there's a person with half a brain who thinks that Mariota is the quarterback of the future. Nobody's thinking that anymore. So I don't understand. There's a few teams out there right now that are desperate for a quarterback. Pittsburgh especially comes to mind. While we can still get something for Mariota, why don't we trade him off for maybe a high draft pick, which we could probably get maybe a third, maybe a 4th-round draft pick for him. Go with our second string and prepare for next year, because nobody thinks Mariota's going to be here anyway. And if we keep him the rest of the year, we don't get anything for him. That's my comment.
It's an interesting thought, Chris. I appreciate the call. I think the biggest problem there is, honestly, I don't know if you can get a 3rd or 4th round pick for him right now, because you're talking about a quarterback who would have to go in someplace else and learn an offense to be able to run it. And especially in Mariota's case, he's already had to learn 5 in 5 years, essentially. That's part of the problem, people think, with Mariota, is he's had so much information overload and such a lack of continuity from the offense and from his organization in his time, he's just never really been able to get comfortable. So it's hard for me to imagine that midstream here, that there's just a steady line of buyers out there that are thinking, yep, we want him to come in and now learn our offense and turn us around here, and we're going to give up a high draft pick for it. I don't see that happening. I think it would be more like a 6th-round pick if you got anything for Mariota at this point. And the other point to be made out there, you brought up the Steelers. They do have some issues, especially if Mason Rudolph is out for any prolonged period of time after suffering that nasty concussion yesterday. But here's the thing, the Steelers are down and out right now. They don't look like a playoff team. Are they really going to give up a draft pick to try to come in and fix this situation for whatever reason? I don't know. I don't know if anybody else is either, because if you really think Mariota's the answer, you might be able to get him at the end of the season just in free agency as this whole thing goes through. So I don't think that's likely, but I will also say this. I don't think the Titans are completely out on Mariota because of what we saw 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. When you block it up and he's not running for his life on every play, he can be a pretty good quarterback in this league. He was very efficient in Atlanta. He threw 3 touchdowns. He hasn't turned the ball over this year. He's been very careful with the ball, but he has been under siege on almost every drop back. And so he's not lighting the world on fire. He's not putting up prolific numbers. That is all true. And I do think there's an issue now where you're in year 5 here, and if you haven't seen it yet, it may not all be the quarterback's fault, but I don't know how you move forward with it. So I think that's a fair point. You know, what would you have to pay moving forward if you thought he was the guy? And is that worth it? Because I don't think you can pay Marcus Mariota $25 million a year based off of what you've seen at this point. But I'm also pretty sure Marcus Mariota is way down the list of what the biggest problems on this team are right now. I don't care who the quarterback is. On some of those plays yesterday, that quarterback is getting hit in 2 seconds after the ball snapped. That's a turnstile on the offensive line up front. And it doesn't matter if it's Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or Marcus Mariota, they're going down and they're getting sacked on that play with that type of blocking in front of them. So the blocking has to get better. The O-line has to figure itself out. And if they can do that, maybe the running game gets going a little bit more, and then the passing game, there's a little bit more time. Wide receivers have to be more involved. They can't have the drops you had yesterday. That's the other thing. There's 3 or 4 balls yesterday on 3rd down where Mariota puts the ball in a position under duress that his wide receivers available to make a play to get a 1st down, convert and extend the drive, and they drop it. Humphreys, Walker, Dion Lewis, lots of different culprits out there. And that is another problem with the offense is when you don't have things going consistently and you're not extending drives, it means everybody's touches are limited because you have fewer plays, right? And when your touches are limited, all of a sudden you're not in as much of a rhythm as you'd like to be. And when you do then get an opportunity, a throw comes your way or a carry comes your way, do you feel the pressure of that moment? If you're a guy that's better off with 5, 6, 7, 8 touches in the game, but right now you're only getting 2 or 3 because that's what the Titans offense is right now, how much more pressure do you feel to produce in those 2 or 3 than you did before when you're used to getting 7 or 8? There is a little bit of that to go around. And then if you have a drop, well, now all of a sudden the problem's compounded on yourself. You're having to deal with your own personal demons there, and the offense is off the field because of it. Back to the phones we go. Let's say hello to Daryl. Daryl, thanks for the call.
Yes, sir. I think when it comes to the Titans, yes, sir. I think when it comes to the Titans defense, I think they do a good job. Now, when it comes to stepping up even more, they could cause more fumbles and intercept the ball. That's extra. But I think the real problem is not the defense. I think the real problem is the offense. And it starts with the offensive line. Listen, Mariota's not a bad quarterback. And I have seen him scramble when it was necessary. And so, my props go to Mariota, but the offensive line, they need to do something about them. And the kicker, if he's going to come and play on Sunday, he needs to understand it's showtime and he needs to make it happen. And so I think they did right by letting him go.
Yeah. All right, we appreciate.
If he had made those kicks, they would have won the game.
Well, yeah.
No matter what.
Well, there's no question about it. Thanks for the call, Daryl. We appreciate it. If Santos makes the kicks, all this is a moot point because the Titans figured out a way to win the game. But he did it. And that's the problem. That's why he was released today. And you're right. Now Cody Parkey, it's up to him. is another guy who's had some issues of putting the ball through the uprights in his career, high-profile issues. Where's he at in terms of a headspace now as he comes into this roster, needing to give them a boost in the special teams game? And by the way, just as a aside for Titans fans out there, how spoiled have we been in terms of the specialist around here? Now, there's been a lot to complain about with the Titans organization and how it's been run, and the offense and the defense at times, and the inconsistencies and not going to the playoffs and all that. There's been plenty to chronicle and complain about over the last 15, 20 years, really since they first got here. But one thing that you've really never had the opportunity to complain about are the specialists. The Titans have been unbelievably blessed to have essentially just a string of both place kickers and punters that have been phenomenal. You know, from Craig Hentrick to Brett Kern as a punter to Al Del Greco, Rob Baronis, Ryan Suckup as your place kicker. The Titans have just had guys that frankly felt automatic. And so when Suckup wasn't there this year, that was one of the things I first thought was, what is this going to be like this year if all of a sudden you don't just count on field goals to go in when the Titans have to go out there? And that's exactly what we found here. Let's go back to the phones and say hello to Ricky. Ricky, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, I just want to touch up on I know you've already been asked it, but the field goal situation, how do you think that's going to improve?
Well, we'll see. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch because Cody Parkey obviously struggled last year with the Bears. Now, Soldier Field is one of the most difficult places to kick in all of professional football because of the wind off of the lake right there. And he struggled last year because of that. Nissan Stadium's easier than that. Other places in the league are easier than that. So maybe he can just get back on the right footing, see some go through the uprights and feel great about himself. But he's going to have to conquer some of those demons in his own head to come out of last season when he was highly criticized, and then obviously that near tragic miss for him in the playoffs that cost the Bears the opportunity to move on in the NFC last year. So he's got to erase that from his mind first and foremost. He's going to be in a place that's a good place to kick on Sunday in Denver with the high altitude, basically unlimited range for kickers there. So hopefully, if you're a Titans backer, you're thinking, get out there, see one or two of those go through the uprights, and hopefully can get back to a guy that through the first 4 years of his career was one of the most reliable kickers in the National Football League. Thank you very much for the call, Ricky. Let's move on. Say hello to, let's see, I guess this is Timothy. Timothy, thanks for the call.
How you doing, Mark?
Doing good.
I just want to touch on this. This to me is, I'm a diehard Titan fan. I love my Titans. I love my city. And I'm going to touch on this with the city. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves by letting the Buffalo Bills take over our stadium like that. I don't understand why we allow another city come in here and take over our stadium. It was more Buffalo Bills fans there than it was Titan fans. And do you think the Titans going to win when you got the other team's fan base in there out rooting us? That's sickening. I was there yesterday. I do not like it. It's disgusting. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, Timothy, you're not alone in that regard. There are a lot of Titans fans who've been diehard and through everything with this team and show up every weekend and have watched too often as Steelers fans and Patriots fans and Packers fans and Bears fans and yesterday Bills fans invade this city. And it's one thing we understand. Nashville is one of the great cities in the country. It is certainly one of the great cities to take a weekend trip and to enjoy yourself with your family or your friends. And so when teams get the Titans, especially non-divisional foes that don't get this trip every year when it pops up, this is a trip you want to take. It is at the top of the list for every fan base in the country, and we get that. But there has to be a way to get more Titans fans in there. And they're fed up, I mean, frankly, with games like yesterday. The idea that the team cannot come back and build off a win the week before and give you that same type of consistent effort and win a game like that. That's what Titans fans are frustrated by. That is why they are not always there. But it does leave a sour taste in your mouth if you are a Titans fan or, frankly, a Titans player to run out of the tunnel and see basically a 50-50 split in the crowd. And old Quentin Spain, former Titans left guard, now with the Buffalo Bills, he said after the game yesterday that he had been telling his team all week, don't worry about the silent count. There will be rare times when we won't be able to hear Josh call out the signals because it's just not going to get very loud. In fact, we're going to have a bunch of fans there ourselves. And that proved out to be the case. And for the Titans to ultimately get to the elite level, I mean, they got to win. They've got to prove to the fans that they can do it. But it also helps to have that home field advantage behind you. And right now, the Titans just don't have much of a home field advantage. Back to the phones. We go to line 2. Say hello to Kathy. Kathy, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thanks for the call.
I think we have a pretty good defense. I don't really have any, negative things to say about our defense. I think they're pretty good. But offensively, what sticks out to me, what stands out, I'm not really impressed with our offensive play calling so far. I know we have a new coordinator, but it seems to be at times boring, predictable, conservative play calling. Haven't seen any flea flickers, haven't seen any trick plays. It just seems predictable, and I think that's part of the problem. I don't think Marcus Mariota is really the problem. And another thing, I still haven't really understood why, for the past few years, the knock has been on our offensive line. It's always been about our offense being the problem, but yet they brought in a coach who is a defensive-minded coach, Mike Vrabel, and yet, Mike Mularkey was an offensive-minded coach. He got us to the playoffs. We won a game. They got rid of him. They brought in Mike Vrabel. Nothing against him personally. He seems like a good guy, but I still haven't gotten an answer about why they got rid of Mike Mularkey. To me, that seemed ridiculous. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Kathy. And I think it's a fair question now. At the time, though, the Titans were struggling offensively under Mike Mularkey and with Terry Robisky as the play caller. And the mission for Amy Adams-Strunk and John Robinson was go find a coach, whether he be himself an offensive or defensive mind, but someone who's going to bring in a play caller that takes Marcus Mariota to the next level. They hired Mike Vrabel because they thought he was the best overall coaching candidate, but they had Matt LaFleur lined up to come in as offensive coordinator, one of the bright young offensive minds in football, who, by the way, is now 4-1 as the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. They never really got off the ground last year because of injuries to Mariota and everybody else, and now you switch to yet another play caller and offensive coordinator, which I think is a huge part of the problem when it comes to Mariota in this offense. Arthur Smith is clearly still trying to find things out about what he has and what he can do with this team 5 games in. But the other thing you have to look at is it comes down again to execution in certain situations to help out the play calling. The Titans have been in more 3rd and long, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15 this year than anybody in the National Football League. And it's because of the penalties, mostly on the offensive line. It's because of negative plays, drops, things like that. And when you're backed up against the chains, I don't care who you are, your chances of converting are very low. And it means that your offensive line is going to be under siege by the pass rush, and you just have to deal with it. And the Titans have struggled mightily with that early on in the season. And then when you're not converting, it means you're punting. You're going off the field in 3 plays or 5 plays. You're not extending drives, which then means all your playmakers aren't getting the touches they should get because none of these drives are extending. It's really kind of a vicious cycle working against itself. I agree the play calling has to be better, but it also comes down to the players just simply executing some of the plays. The negative plays, the drops, the penalties, those things have to go. because it is putting this team behind the 8 ball, and they are not good enough when they're on schedule or when they're playing with the chains to be behind it. They just can't. They're not good enough when they're on schedule. They cannot play from behind schedule. Sneak in Courtney here. Let's say hello, Courtney. Good evening.
I think Kenny Hill should play. They ain't had him. Can he play Sunday?
I mean, he could play. He's back there, but I think the Titans are a firm believer that Marcus Mariota is their best quarterback right now. Anything else, Courtney? All right, well, we appreciate the call. All right, we got to take a break. We are running behind. Jackie, Clifford, hang with us. We will get to your calls as soon as we get back on the other side. This is Titans Talk.